Most coaches create content that teaches at their audience, but teaching does not convert clients. Belief shifting does. And one of the most effective ways to shift people's beliefs is through storytelling. And in this video, I'm going to walk you through 4 stories that you can use in your everyday content, your every week content to be able to get more of your ideal clients pre sold, reaching out to you and wanting to buy your stuff. In fact, unless you're living under a rock, you probably know that we're in this AI era where information itself is commoditized. I mean, people can pull out their phones, they can go on the Chat GPT or Claude, or they can pick their flavor, and they can either find content really, really quickly or create content really, really quickly. And because of that, information is no longer like that valuable to people because it's everywhere, it's in abundance. And needless to say, when you teach at somebody, like nothing fundamentally is changing in them. It's like a tactic you're giving them. Nothing's changing beneath the surface that's actually going to cause them to want to reach out. And we've all probably heard this paradigm. I mean, people like Tony Robbins have talked about this, but you have like your identity, then your belief system, which perpetuates your thinking, and then you have your feelings and the actions you take because of all of that, which dictate your outcomes and your results. So, needless to say, like getting somebody a deep transformation in their life is going to require you to change their beliefs. But in your marketing, when you can start to get them to think differently, when you can literally shift their beliefs, you will get them to take more action. Does that make sense? And I think we all get this fundamentally, but a lot of people don't know how to do this in their marketing, and therefore maybe it's really challenging. They'll post content, they might get likes, they get you get some engagement, you can get followers, all of this stuff, but it's like pulling freaking teeth to get qualified leads consistently and predictably on calls. And when you do get people on calls, you've got all of these objections that you're trying to handle, and it's because you've never actually shifted somebody's belief. For example, and then we're going to go into the 4 stories in weight loss, which is an industry that I've built my own businesses in. From running I built and sold a gym in South Florida. I've built a multiple 6-figure online fitness business, and I've been coaching and consulting, doing sales, all types of stuff inside of the health and fitness industry for about 15 years now. So I know it very well, is what I'm trying to say. And it's very common for somebody to be like, hey, I'm going to teach you how to eat healthier. I'm going to teach you how to work out. I'm going to teach you these mindset things, but nothing actually changes in the person. So somebody might be like, I'm going to diet and eat healthy, right? Yeah. And then they eat 300 calories and they're starving themselves, and they don't understand why they don't have energy, why like their hormones are being jacked up, why they're not actually getting results. But when we can get somebody to believe, for example, it's not just about eating healthy, it's about eating right. We're changing the belief system. It's not eating healthy, that's part of it. It's actually eating right. And then we teach them what that means. We give them the insights and the ahas and the epiphanies. Now, all of a sudden, we've got people that are like, holy crap, how do I do this? How do I eat right? So no longer are they believing about they just need a diet and eat healthy. We've changed their belief and their thinking to I need to eat right. And so now when you drop a call to action, you're going to get way more people to be like, dude, tell me what to do, right? Because you've changed it. Does that make sense? So with that being said, let's go ahead and dive into the 4 core stories. And all of these stories can be used. Sometimes you could use them almost all in one video. And I'm going to walk you through some ways you can tactically do this, but they all can be used individually as well. And so the first story is going to be what I call the backstory. This is your personal story to why you were teaching the solution that you were teaching. Now, some people might call it the origin story. That's fine. I like to call it the backstory because to me, this story should lead to why you have the current offer that you have today. Like why? Why are you teaching things the way that you're teaching? Most of the time that comes from your backstory. Like for example, when I first got started in fitness, I was a firefighter, right? And I was 53 pounds overweight. I got electrocuted in a house fire, almost died. And I remember trying to like lose weight, and I was trying to figure all this stuff out, and I just couldn't. I was like, my back was against the wall. I didn't know what to do. And I ended up getting myself skinny fat for like a long time. And I was just like, dude, I'm like, I don't know what to do to like get like muscle. Like I was like so naive. And then one day I stumbled upon this guy named Nate Miyake, I think was his name, and he had this thing called the Island Diet. where you fast in the morning and you basically eat like rice and protein and vegetables at night. And I did that for like a little while, about 3, 4 months. And then within that time, I woke up one day and I started getting abs. And I was just like, holy crap, like what's going on? And so I tell that story when back in my fitness days when I had a fitness offer, because it was like kind of my epiphany to where I came up with my solution, what I called Flex Fuel, which was like very closely modeled to the island diet. And people were like, cool. So it started to resonate. I brought people through my frustrations, my struggle, all the way over to I found the solution. And with any type of story, the more multi-sensory you can make it, the better. And so this story sells people on the belief of like, why you and why now? So people are buying into you because of that. The second story, and arguably probably the most important story. In fact, this story could arguably go first in the hierarchy here, but it's what I call the struggle story. And so this is something that I teach in my magic messaging makeover process, which is just my unique way of helping people with their messaging. But it is a vital story that you need to know. And so, in order to come up with the story, you need to know your dream client, your ideal client. You need to know what their current struggle story is. So, if you think in the life, like don't get like super surface level here. The way to make this powerful to where you could shift people's beliefs is by knowing how to articulate this better than they can. In fact, there was a guy, a famous marketer named Jay Abraham, and I believe he said this. I know this was said, I believe it came from him, where he said, if you can articulate the problem better than your client can, they're going to automatically assume that you have the solution. And so, where a lot of people go wrong is when they're trying to use like these strategies like storytelling and whatnot, they're speaking to a whole niche, right? So they're speaking to like busy professionals. And I'm like, homie, that's like 75,000 niches. You know what I mean? That's like sub niches. That's a huge audience. And so you want to really hone it into like an ideal client. Think about one person to where if you literally had like a Neuralink in their brain and a video camera following them around, like you would be able to know like everything, the pains that they're going through, the symptoms they're experiencing on a regular basis, the things they're complaining about to their friends, the limiting beliefs that they're currently thinking, right? Maybe it's my genetics, that's why I can't lose weight, or I gotta just diet and blah blah blah, or I gotta get more leads if it's a business owner, right? What are the beliefs that they have, and then what are the actions that they're taking that are not getting them results? The more you could tap into that struggle story and articulate that inside of your marketing, the more powerful it's going to be because you're truly going to resonate. You're going to pull in the right people because, again, when you can articulate the problem better than they can, they're going to automatically assume that you have the solution. And so that leads us to story number three, and which is what I call case study storytelling. So, case study storytelling is where you're literally telling a story about a client and you're demonstrating their struggle story and you are demonstrating how they use your unique solution, your offer to get results. And so the power with this story, and this is something I actually learned from, to give credit where credit's due, from a couple of producers when I competed on American Ninja Warrior. So American Ninja Warrior, if you don't know, little sidebar here, anybody can do it. Like you have to submit a 3-minute video to the production team, and the video has to demonstrate your energy. You have to have obviously have some kind of skill set for the sport, and then your story. And learning how to tell powerful stories for that video, and one of the producers, his name was Peter, actually gave me a lot of tips on this. And it really kind of cemented and made it powerful because I applied it into my actual marketing for my business too. But he told me it's like making it as multi-sensory as possible, really pulling people into the story. Does that make sense? And then the more specific that you can get with the details, the more concrete you can get, the better. If you stay super surface level, it doesn't really pull people in. And so you want to be able to tell a client story. Like, for example, if I was using this in weight loss, like I remember I used to tell this story about my client Holly, who she was trying, and I would name every diet. She was trying like Weight Watchers, Atkins, Whole 30. She went to the doctor. Her doctor put her on some kind of like peptide and all this stuff, and like nothing that she was doing was working. She hired a personal trainer. She was going to the gym 3 to 4 times a week, and she was doing about 45 minutes to 50 minutes of cardio every single day. Like she was walking around her neighborhood, and like I would go into all these details, and she's still struggling. Right, so I'm tapping into the struggle story, and she believed that now she was in her late 30s. This is just genetics. This is the way the life is supposed to be. Tapping into the limiting beliefs. And then I'm going into like the opposing side. So here, Holly reached out to me. She saw some of my posts on Instagram. She reached out to me, and I got her hooked up with our stubborn fat solution, which is where we got her on her flex field nutrition protocol. I got her doing actual metabolic strength training so she can ignite her metabolism and start to shed fat. And then I helped her with some of her food anxieties that were currently kind of like shackling her. And we went through this process, and within the first, and now I can go into the results that she started to get. Does that make sense? And so when you could tell a powerful story where you're guiding people through somebody else that's like them. Now, this may be like a duh moment, but I've literally seen people butcher this. If you're telling a story about a client where it doesn't resonate with your dream clients, just don't tell the story. Make sure it aligns with your dream clients. And then the fourth story is going to be what I call belief shifting stories. And so we started this whole video off where you got to shift people's beliefs. And you could see, hopefully now, that telling stories will anchor that into people's minds. But fundamentally, we want to have some stories that directly, with intention, shift the belief. So, for example, we talked earlier about eating healthy versus eating right. So this was very common in my niche back in weight loss, where people are like, I need to eat healthy, and they would diet. They would literally eat 300 to 600 calories a day, starving themselves. And so I would have to come in, and this is where you can use metaphors, analogies. I can use parables. They don't have to actually be a client story. They don't have to be my backstory, but you can use those as well. And so I could pick and choose, right? I can use a metaphor, and I would consider that a belief shifting story. I could be like, hey, look, imagine going to the gas station and you're about to travel on a 10-hour road trip with your family. And imagine only filling up your tank with $5 in gas. How far do you think you're going to make it on that 10-hour road trip? Probably not very far, right? Well, see, that's what happens in your body when you're eating 300 to 600 calories. You're not actually going to quote unquote lose weight. In fact, you could, but what happens is your body can't just run out of gas like your car. So it has to store, and it stores the fat, and it starts to eat your muscle tissue. And this downregulates your metabolism. It starts to jack up your hormones over the length of time, right? And now people are like, holy crap. And then now they get it. So you can use that stuff in a belief shifting story. But likewise, you can also use your backstory. You can use a client story to be able to get people to see. And this is where we can mold them all together. The struggle story, a client story, and your backstory you can use in one video to help bridge the gap between an old belief, an old way of doing things, and a new belief and a new way of doing things, which is your way. So that is the power of storytelling, and it's really fundamentally key for you to be able to start to focus on shifting people's beliefs. And if you want to see the 8 core beliefs that you need to shift in your marketing, if you want to get more pre-sold clients reaching out to you, hitting you up in the DMs, wanting to get on to calls with you, wanting to buy your stuff, then in the link in the description, I actually have a live masterclass, a workshop that I taught on the 8 core beliefs with a full playbook, examples of how you can actually apply this if you're more visual like me. It's all downloadable inside the link in the description. Feel free to check it out. I hope this helps. Remember, your message matters now more than ever has before. And if you found this video helpful, click subscribe. Bye for now.